Hello and welcome to Check 1 2, where we give you the lowdown on testicular cancer by talking to survivors, advocates and supporters of testicular cancer awareness here at the world famous podcast studio Glasgow. So today's guest is Nathan McCann, who plays with Hillhead Jordan Hill Rugby team, and his story is interesting in terms of how he dealt with dealing with cancer almost on his own, in a new relationship and playing rugby as well. So ladies and gentlemen, Nathan McCann. When I was going through it, me and my wife, I didn't meet anybody else who was going through testicular cancer. So to be able to kind of have stories like yourself or like other guests that we've had on for folk to click on to, and it just be really a nice wee, I'm not alone in this.
Yeah, that was probably the main thing for me. Like, see, when I was in the ward or whatever, I was just surrounded by like no one else really. There was one other guy who had testicular cancer, but that's the only other person I'd ever known to kind of come across it. Yeah. So like, I'd obviously come across cancer in my family, like just or family friends or whatever, but I never actually kind of had a one-on-one, like, I can relate to what you're going through kind of thing. Yeah, so.
Yeah. And that's the big thing, eh? Like, because you do need that to be able to relate. You look at all the other kind of cancer charities or cancer support out there. It's all geared around because obviously testicular cancer stats aren't massive, and especially in Scotland, and we're so widespread. But to be able to have this connection for guys to kind of hook into, so hopefully over the kind of coming months and years, and hopefully we're able to do this for a long time and just always have guests on that are willing to kind of share their stories. So
I mean, there was just one other guy like in the ward. I think he came in for his first treatment the same day that I did. Right. So he was like the only other person. I was like, oh, finally someone I can like chat to about it, because obviously chat to your pals or whatever, but you just kind of take the piss, you have a laugh, like it's not a serious kind of side of it. But with that one other guy, I was kind of chatting away, being like, we're feeling the same kind of things with like family, just kind of hearing the news and stuff like that. So just refreshing to kind of, and nice to have someone else to kind of, at least you were going through the same thing at the same time. Yeah,
and almost share war stories as such, eh? Like, I'm feeling like this today, like, how are you feeling?
Like I specifically remember I was like, I'd be like, yeah, I'm feeling all right, but he was having like really bad side effects just from the chemo and stuff like that. But I was like, all right, maybe I don't have it too bad then. Yeah. Like, because he was like, yeah, I'm being sick, like dizzy when I stand up, stuff like that. And I was like, all right, I'm a wee bit tired. I'll probably just read in. Like, I was aware that I clearly didn't have like as bad an experience as it could have been, I suppose. So
it's amazing, like when you talk to like other folk, like how varied the reaction to the chemo was as well. Like, like you've got guys like yourself who maybe didn't have a huge amount of side effects, and you've got folk who are just floored just, and like, everyone going. There's a guy that I've been following on TikTok who's going through his treatment just now, so he's kind of vlogging it almost on TikTok, and he was talking about the do you remember, did you get the injections to stop your like being sore? Like,
I didn't get anyone's to like for being sore or anything like that. I just got kind of the white blood cell thingies that I had to give myself, but I didn't have any kind of other injections outside of that.
Oh, it's like, and I think it was like those ones as well, and he was talking about those, and then, it's like he had to go into the morphine sulfate, and I got that, but I never needed to use it. And then you think how much pain you must be in to go, no, I'm going to take essentially medical heroin.
Yeah, like, now that you're saying that, I'm like, oh, maybe I really did get it quite good, like, all things considered.
But so thanks for coming on anyway, and being willing to share your story. It's great to kind of have you here. Could you just, for everybody out there, just a bit about yourself, and your treatment and things like that?
Yeah, so my name's Nathan. Had testicular cancer. When did I get diagnosed? Diagnosed in kind of October last year. Had kind of 3 rounds of treatment, and then was given the all clear in February. So I'm just kind of going for like my follow-up checkups and things like that. But yeah, I like sport. I also like to play my PlayStation. Bit of a nerd in that way. Like, same with films, like Lord of the Rings, Marvel, nerd. But yeah, that's just a wee bit about me.
Yeah, and so you obviously, you know, getting that diagnosis at such a kind of young age, you know, how did you feel, you know, when you initially got told it, you know? In fact, I'll kind of maybe start a wee bit further back. Like, how did you end up finding that you had testicular cancer?
So it's a bit of a weird one. My mum lives in America, so I was going away out there last May kind of time. Was getting ready to go out there, go and see her, spend a couple of weeks there. And I think maybe 3 or 4 days before I went away, I was in the bath, obviously. And I was like, that doesn't feel right. So yeah, made a call, just wanted to schedule a doctor's appointment for when I came back. And then kind of the whole time I was away, like I'd be lying at night, just kind of feeling my testicle, like just kind of being like, this doesn't feel good. Because like years prior, I went to the doctors and it turned out to be an epididymal cyst. So I knew what that felt like. And I was like, this feels completely different. So yeah, fast forward, end of my holiday, went to the doctors. Arrived at the doctors, kind of explained the situation. And obviously they performed the examination, went through that. And he was like, yeah, I don't really think there's much to worry about. And I was kind of standing there and I was like, I feel like this should be something I should worry about because it just doesn't feel... I was trying to explain to him, like, I know what it feels like now, but once everything kind of relaxes and you've warmed up a bit, you can feel everything a lot better. And I kind of was explaining to him that it's a rock solid, like, kind of lump. So yeah, he basically just said, I'll put you down for an ultrasound. The waiting list could be kind of 6 months because obviously everything was still backlogged from COVID. So I was like, right, okay. I didn't feel kind of comfortable with that. So went away from the doctors and just obviously once you kind of find something like that, you're like, it's constantly on your mind.
Yeah.
Like for me, it was anyway. So kind of going from there, I was like, I'm not waiting for, like because I've been before to kind of get a checkup and stuff, I'd no kind of qualms about, I don't really want anyone to examine me or anything. I was like, this doesn't feel right. And I'm not waiting 6 months to have this ultrasound. So kept kind of not hounding the doctor and the doctor's surgery phoning, but I phoned quite a few times and just explained this definitely isn't like something I want to kind of wait. So they rushed through. I didn't get to see that doctor again, and they just kind of rushed through. Right, you go for an ultrasound. So I think the ultrasound was kind of scheduled for. This was kind of an ongoing thing, and it just happened to be that it was scheduled for October. So we got it as soon as I could. But again, up until that, I'd went away on another holiday with my friends. We went to Portugal, and that kind of whole time it was in the back of my mind. I'm like, I'm feeling it. Even I was starting to feel it when I was kind of running about playing rugby. So like certain ways I'd move my leg, it was just really uncomfortable. So then when it came to kind of October time, the actual testicle had gone like rock solid is the only way to kind of describe it.
Wow, okay.
So I still had a lump, but my actual testicle just felt very heavy and yeah, like basically like a stone is the only way I could describe it. And yeah, fast forward to October, had my ultrasound booked for, I think it was up at York Hill, but I turned up at Gartnavel. So I was just, because I've got like a hereditary kind of blood condition where I get checkups. They're always at Gartnavel. So I just assumed this appointment was at Gartnavel, turned up, and the wee receptionist was like, I can't see your name anywhere. Have you got your letter? And I was like, yeah, here it is. And she was like, you're meant to be at York Hill 10 minutes ago. And I was like, right, great. But thankfully, they took me that day. Maybe I had to wait kind of half an hour, 45 minutes. And yeah, I'd been for an ultrasound before because of the epididymal cyst back when I was at uni. So kind of knew the script. They started kind of scanning the area. And maybe like 2 or 3 minutes into it, we were chatting away with the 2 nurses that were in there. Maybe kind of 2 or 3 minutes in, they just kind of went silent. And I was like, I knew in the back of my head, like, I kind of went into that being like, right, I probably do have testicular cancer. Hadn't told anyone. And then when I was actually in, and they all of a sudden just kind of, there was no chat, and they kind of gave it, not like a look, but they just kind of looked at each other and kind of a bit of worry. And she was like, right, if you just wait outside, we'll get you like another appointment sorted. So then I knew basically, she was like, we'll either see you tomorrow or Wednesday. And then from there, I knew pretty much that I had testicular cancer. So I think the actual diagnosis was on the Wednesday. Like, had bloods and stuff taken as well. And yeah, that's kind of how I found out. And so it was a bit of a kind of, it would have went on longer, could have been potentially a lot worse if I hadn't just kind of kept annoying the doctor, basically. So yeah.
I mean, and that, good for you for being able to kind of be so kind of strong in your advocacy for like wanting to be checked earlier, because you know a lot of folk, and I think that's the problem now as well. A lot of folk will just go, "No, the doc said it's okay. I'm not going to wait," or "I'll just wait." Sorry, and I think for that kind of period of time, you know, you were clearly worried anyway, but to be told it could be 6 months, that must have been crippling.
It was just, I was like, obviously I get it. Everyone's kind of waiting for treatment and things like that, and the NHS are doing the best they can. But I was just basically like, the doctor has said that this kind of isn't really something to worry about, but just kind of had that feeling like myself, that I was just like, this isn't normal, basically. And then kind of once I came back from my, like, the holiday with my friends, that was in August. That was like where things kind of became, I was like noticing it in kind of day-to-day life, but I just kind of thought I was just uncomfortable kind of constantly. And I was at work, like I work from home and things like that, so pretty chilled out, but I was tired constantly, and I had like a really, really sore lower back. And then obviously following treatment, that tiredness, the sore back went away. So that was kind of another kind of telltale sign where, looking back, I'm like, that's why I had those kind of symptoms. Like, there'd be days where I was like falling asleep at my desk, so I could sleep for 9 hours at night, get up, and then come kind of lunchtime, like 12 o'clock, sit at my desk, I was ready for like falling asleep again. And then like sometimes I'd be, after work, I'd want to go to the gym, or I'd have to take the dog out. I'd sit down, have a coffee after work, and I remember one night waking up at like 10:30, just sitting on the couch. So it was just stuff like that, where once you kind of all add it up, I was like, this definitely isn't normal. So yeah, just kind of finally getting to, I think it was maybe a bit of relief as well, that like they actually finally were like, right, this is what the issue is. You do have testicular cancer. Where I was like, initially, kind of when I was in that ultrasound appointment, not weight lifted, but just kind of like, I was right. Like, there was reason to kind of follow up. And then just obviously I was fine. But then once I got to the actual, when you get sat down and then he explains, the doctor says, do you have testicular cancer? You have testicular cancer. Yeah. And I was just like, then everything kind of came out. Like, I had a good cry. And then, that was, I think, kind of after that initial kind of like 10 minutes of being sat down and told, like, from then on, I wasn't really too, it was more just like, right, this is what I've got to do, rather than, oh no, this has happened to me, sort of thing.
Yeah. I kind of had a similar experience with mine. That when I got my ultrasound and all that, it was pretty conclusive, that it was going to be. But I still had this weird thing in the back of my head, because my GP and the urologist that I saw, when they both examined me, like, my GP was like, I don't know what this is. It doesn't feel right.
Yeah.
Up to the urologist. So I went up to urology. Even the urologist was like, it doesn't typically feel like a cancer. Mm-hmm. But it's because it turned out mine was what was called an embryonic carcinoma. So it was growing inside the testicle, but the only reason that I had a lump was because it herniated. So it had this like kind of not quite as big as a pea size, but it was like you said, like rock hard. But it was that thing of got all that information and it was like, yeah, it looks like it is testicular cancer. But it was when I had my orchidectomy and they'd done the biopsy on it pretty much that day. The surgeon came round and was like, yeah, so with your testicular cancer, we're going to move on to probably chemotherapy. And it was at that point, it all hit home and I just burst into tears. And the surgeon kind of looked at me like, did you not know this was potentially what was? And I was like, no, I knew, but it's just now hearing it out loud.
It's just hearing the...
Yeah, and then moving on
cancer, I suppose.
And then moving on to chemotherapy because, you know, you yourself, you've probably, you know, you've heard the people or just heard of chemo growing up. It's a heavy word to hear, you know. So you've went in, you've had your ultrasound. Were you booked in for your surgery relatively quickly after that?
So yeah, I think the Wednesday, it was a Wednesday in October that I was basically sat down, told I had testicular cancer, and then I think they'd maybe arranged it for like the Friday or the Monday. So it was a really quick turnaround to just kind of obviously get the testicle removed. But I do remember when I was as well, just as we were talking about it, when I sat down and been told I had testicular cancer, they obviously take your bloods and stuff like that as well. I remember sitting down with like a nurse who came in. You know how like some nurses just have like you're a mum like kind of vibe about them?
Yeah, definitely.
She came in and I just, because my mum was in America, I just burst out crying again.
Yeah.
And I was just like, I don't know if it was just because she was kind of like, she just reminded me of it because my mum used to be a nurse as well. So as soon as she came in, I just floods of tears again. And then that was me. But yeah, I think it was maybe kind of either the Friday or the Monday. So it was a relatively quick turnaround for the actual surgery. Like, as I said, just kind of as soon as they were like, these are the steps we need to take, surgery, chemo, I was like, let's just do it.
Yeah.
Like, again, relieved's not the right word, but just finally kind of being like, right, this is what's wrong with me, let's kind of fix it and kind of move forward from there. So yeah, I didn't, as you said, just kind of hearing about chemotherapy, and my papa had, I think he had stage 4 lymphoma, and he had to get chemo and stuff like that. I just remember going in as a kid, kind of seeing him. Somehow, miraculously, he recovered. He's completely fine. But just like seeing him there, that's my only, like lying in the bed, just kind of obviously having all the side effects and stuff like that. I was just like, that is my only kind of experience with it. So obviously I was a bit apprehensive and kind of worried.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I was the same. My only experience with kind of anybody going through chemo, I must have been about maybe either 10 or 11, and there was a kid who was like just a year younger than me. He had leukemia. So my experience was just this guy going through chemo as a kid, and unfortunately, you know, this guy he died. I think he was 12 when he died, and that was my only experience of seeing somebody, because like, you know, when you hear chemo, you just think poison, you think the hair falling out, how gaunt people get.
Yeah.
You know, although I'm probably one of the few people who actually got fat while on chemo.
That was one thing. Like, obviously you get all the fluids and stuff. My face was massive. It'd all gone to like my neck and my face, just all the fluid. So I was the same. I think I woke up maybe, obviously the weigh and stuff like that as well. And I think I maybe woke up like 8 kilograms heavier than I did the day before. So I felt it. It wasn't, I just felt like a big blob. It wasn't ideal, but.
I know, and I suppose it's all the steroids they give you as well for that anti-sickness and all that type of thing as well. So obviously, you're going through all that. Your mum's over in the States.
Yeah.
It's quite a heavy emotional burden to kind of carry as well, especially being so young, losing a testicle. I'll ask this to anybody, and you don't have to answer it, and we can kind of gloss over it. But did you opt for getting the prosthetic, or was it something that you chose not to do?
I remember telling my girlfriend when it happened. I just remember sitting. I just been told I had testicular cancer, had my cry, and then like just kind of came around, and genuinely like it must have been about 2 minutes after he said I had cancer, he was like, so do you want a prosthetic or not? And I was like, I haven't even remotely kind of contemplated a prosthetic or anything like that, but at the end of the day I didn't bother. I was just like, it is what it is.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. And it's interesting, I didn't either, you know, it was just the same, and it was, you get folk who, they, you know, sometimes like I've heard guys who never even got the choice, they're just saying, well, we'll put this prosthetic in, and then,
really?
and you'll get guys who are maybe young, and like, no, in terms of kind of, it allows me to tell somebody that I've had that before, you know, like, so, you know, if you're with somebody and
just a chance to kind of explain.
Just the chance to explain, well, this has happened, and actually watch this, ping, it doesn't hurt.
Yeah, I was like, it really makes zero difference to me. It's not gonna, when they kind of explain that you can get scar tissue and you might have to take it out at a later date and stuff like that, I was just like, you know what, it sounds like it's more hassle than it's worth, so I'll just go without.
Yeah, and see these types of conversations as well. I mean, guys who hopefully, if they do catch this before they go, you know, it helps give a more informed kind of thing, because, you know, your masculinity is not tied to your testicles. I think that's the thing. I think, you know, and we all, and I even though I felt like that, I still had afterwards, you know, that kind of like, I'm not quite whole and all that type of thing. But it wasn't, I didn't think I needed another one. It was just a very strange type of feeling, like to be missing something, you know?
Yeah, I know what you mean. It was just kind of, it was more the kind of, oh, it's not there anymore. Like it's missing, there's no, but I think maybe kind of a week or so after the surgery, I was like, realistically, it doesn't matter. Everything can function properly. You can function properly with just one. So I was just like, there's no, as far as I can see, there's no benefit to having a prosthetic one other than the aesthetic of having two balls again. So,
and let's be honest, you know, balls aren't the most aesthetic of things.
Exactly. So I was just like, you know what, it's fine. I'll make do with one.
I just like, nah, the one will do fine. Yeah. So obviously, like, having been in a kind of a situation where you're really fit, you go to the gym, you play sport, you know, you play rugby. You know, at what stage your rugby season and all this, did this happen for you? Can you remember that?
So I remember doing, so obviously pre-season would be kind of July, August, September. Season usually starts around September. So I just remember that's kind of, I was saying when I noticed kind of things becoming more uncomfortable, when I would be doing running and certain things, you know, you kind of fix your ball every so often. I was doing that all the time, but it was purely because there was just like a general discomfort that was ongoing as I was running around and just running about. So I'd say maybe season started maybe like the first week in September or something like that, and I probably got like 2 or 3 games in, and yeah, that's when I kind of found out I had testicular cancer. But yeah, just kind of playing with it. It didn't affect me kind of as much like performance wise, but there was just always a constant discomfort. So if I fell a certain way, I'd been tackled a certain way, I'd be like, oh, that definitely doesn't feel right. So I think that kind of reinforced my initial, this definitely isn't just an epididymal cyst or something like that. So yeah, I think kind of following that, it was maybe late September, and I think I maybe played about an hour of the game, and I don't think I even got touched. I just had like a shooting pain, like right on the kind of the side of my testicle, because I had a lump right on the side, so it was, for me, it was like blaringly obvious that this is, because it wasn't at either end or where there's kind of the tubes and everything are. So I was like, this is, to me, blaringly obvious that this is what it is. So yeah, I think that was kind of the moment where, again, in my head, I was like, this needs to get checked. So I was just like running along, or I don't know, went to go for a line out or something like that, and I just had like a shooting pain in my testicle, and I was just like, this definitely shouldn't be happening. So yeah, I think maybe following that, I think I'd done something to my calf, pulled my calf, strained it or something like that. So I wasn't playing anyway at the start of October, and in the middle of October is when I found out. So
yeah, and it's quite amazing. I always say this, like rugby guys are hardly bits of kit though, like, because I mean the fact that you were playing even with that, because I remember like for me, like I was like, you know, that way you skip down the stairs one or two at a time.
Yeah.
I felt that kind of heaviness, and it took the wind out of me. You know, I'm like, I can't imagine playing that in a rugby.
I think it was like literally, it was just kind of every so often I'd get like a weird pain.
Yeah,
and like I don't. It was just kind of there was a dull kind of ache, kind of constantly, but kind of as time passed, you kind of get used to it, sort of thing. But then again, that pain every so often was the moment where I was like, right, I can't keep doing this sort of thing. So yeah, I mean, I was playing on, but realistically, I probably should have earlier been like, this needs to be kind of sorted before I continue. So.
Mm. And did you confide in any of your teammates or any of your kind of friends?
So this is the thing, I kept it completely. I didn't want to say to anyone, look, I think I might have this or I think I might have that. I just wanted to basically, because my girlfriend's kind of annoyed that I kept it all to myself, and like my mum and stuff like that, they're like, oh, why didn't you tell anyone? Like, why didn't you tell me? I could have helped you, could have gone to your appointments. And I was like, I didn't want to add that kind of extra worry to, obviously everyone's got their own stresses, their own kind of worries at the time. I didn't want to then add to that. So in my head, I was like, it could be nothing, and I might have worried someone for no reason, basically. Like, yes, it would have been a bit of peace of mind and might have been easier to kind of go to appointments, help me through, but I didn't want to kind of create that worry. So I was just like, I'll wait until I have a definitive answer and then I'll take it from there. So yeah, I basically waited till I had that appointment where he mentioned the word cancer. I was like, right, now I kind of have to let people know. I can't kind of keep it to myself any longer.
Mm-hmm. And would you, like now looking back on that, would you change that, or is it still something you probably just kind of?
Yeah, I don't think I would, to be honest. Yeah. Like, it's not because obviously like my family, friends, girlfriend, they would have been super supportive, would have helped me, like, although some of my pals live a bit further afield, as soon as they knew, they would like come up and visit, we'd spend time together. It's not because of like, I didn't know if they'd support me or anything like that. It was purely because I didn't want to worry anyone else at the time until I kind of found it a bit more myself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I suppose as well, because it's such a rare thing to happen, and again, like the people around you probably hadn't really met anybody with testicular cancer, and most people's, you know, knowledge about it comes from like maybe the kind of sports people that have had it, you know, like with my age group it'd be Alan Stubbs and John Hartson and Lance Armstrong. Those were the three, you know.
John Hartson and Lance Armstrong were the two that like stood out for me. But yeah, it was also, my girlfriend wasn't really my girlfriend at the time. We'd been seeing each other, and then I was like, look, I've got this issue. If you don't want to be my girlfriend or whatever, I totally get it. And then later that day of finding out I had cancer, that's when we kind of became official, sort of thing. So it was like a really weird, like I would have totally understood if she was just like, I can't like go through this or anything like that, but she's been amazing. So yeah, it was just a really weird kind of situation to be in, like in limbo sort of thing.
Yeah. And yeah, being at that kind of start of a relationship, you know, and it's, you know, and especially to be doing with one of your kind of like your sexual organs, you know, it's at the start of a young relationship, you know.
It was not ideal, but
yeah, it's but amazing that, you know, because a lot of people might have just went like, yeah, I'm going to tap out of this, you know, and you could understand that. And,
yeah, no, I was totally like, I completely understand if like not what you signed up for, sort of thing. Mm-hmm. So, but she was like, I think she literally, we went a walk that day, and she like accidentally spluttered out like, oh, so you're my boyfriend, blah blah blah, and I was like, so you've accidentally called me your boyfriend, so is this official now? And it went from there. But yeah, it was just a a really weird kind of limbo that we're both in.
Yeah.
And yeah, to come out the other side of it, obviously, is fantastic. So
yeah, and it's such a struggle as well, because even though, you know, like it's you that's going through it, you know, the effect that it has on the people who are directly with you at that whole time, it's quite something, you know.
I think for me that was the biggest thing that I noticed. Like, for me, yes, I had it, but it was more of, I've just got to get through it. Got some chemo, blah blah blah. I'll be fine. Come the end of it, I'll be bald, but hopefully it'll come back. And then once I kind of got to around Christmas time, that was I think my third round of chemo, and that's when I noticed kind of, like, I was obviously aware of it beforehand, but that's when I really noticed this is a lot harder for other people. I think, like, my girlfriend, and like my mum and dad and my gran and papa and stuff like that, this is a lot harder for them than kind of it is for me, because, like, I'm like, oh, I'll be fine, blah blah blah, but they're the ones kind of seeing it from the outside. And yeah, that's when it first kind of hit me. This is actually quite a big thing for other people, maybe more so than it is for me. Like, not that I was kind of understating it or just being like, it's fine. It was more like, all right, this is pretty serious and stuff like that, and it is having an effect on other people.
I think it's as well, like, for you personally, you're looking at it from, like, you have to compartmentalize it a little bit, because, you know, people objectively looking at it, you know, see the way that you're looking, you know, they see that you're in pain, or that you're kind of looking like you're struggling physically, but also, you know, other people hear the word cancer and they objectively think more about the mortality of it, you know, whereas I couldn't, you know, I had to be positive and really stay on track with, like, no, I'm going to get better, it's fine, this is just what I'm going through, you know. And for me, it wasn't until after all that happened and I was clear that all those thoughts hit me. Like, oh shit, I've been through quite a big thing here.
That was the same for me. I think maybe, again, I was more just like, once I was first diagnosed and things like that, I was like, look, get the testicle out, we'll be fine. Got to do X, Y, Z, and you'll be grand. Like, that was basically how I kind of dealt with it in my head. And then I think it was kind of around that Christmas time when I realised what it was, the kind of impact it had on other folk. I remember I was lying, like, went next door, was lying on my bed with my girlfriend, and I just completely just like burst into tears again, because that's when it kind of hit me with the kind of mortality of it, and just basically all the emotions other folk were feeling. And I think I'd kind of bottled up the kind of, this might not go well sort of thing in my head, but never really kind of vocalized it or anything to anyone. And then when my girlfriend was there, we both just kind of let loose, and that's when it kind of came out, and let her know kind of all the things I was feeling, like, about my appearance. Just kind of, I was tired all the time. I was trying to pretend that, like, oh no, I'm just a bit tired, I'll be fine. But I was absolutely knackered. I think I stayed in from, I think maybe my last treatment was, I got out on New Year's Eve for one of my treatments. So I think from the start of the year to about the 8th or 9th of January, I didn't leave the house. I was couldn't walk the dog, couldn't do anything. I was just completely, like, out of it, completely knackered. And yeah, I think that's when everything kind of hit me, and was more just kind of, not fingers crossed, but I was like, I hope this will go well, sort of thing. So I'd went from being like, this is fine, it's all going to go well, to kind of maybe having that doubt in my head where, it is cancer. It's obviously, cancer is quite generally a very bad thing. And yeah, that's when I was just having the kind of thoughts of, what if this happens? What if that happens? And, like, going for my scans, I was always just shitting myself, like, please don't come up with anything else. Like, yeah, that's just kind of how I dealt with it in my own head, sort of thing.
And obviously, you know, being so close to having finished treatment and all that, one of my big things is still and I'm 8 years, and I'm still like, oh, I hope it doesn't come back. In fact, I'm in the process, like I've found something on my remaining testicle. Going to be getting an ultrasound. But it's funny because I'd done the same thing as you. I had my ultrasound was last week. I turned up to Forth Valley Royal, and I'm like, I'm here for my ultrasound. They're like, oh, you're meant to be in Stirling at 5:30. I'm like, oh no, but unfortunately they couldn't take me. They were backlogged, so I've got that reappointment. But it's that reoccurrence of the cancer that I think
it's just really kind of always in the back of your head sort of thing. Yeah, I guess it's just one of the things that comes with it, I suppose. Just kind of any wee thing that kind of comes up and you're like, not sure how I feel about that. So I was saying I injured my calf.
Yep.
I had like scar tissue just kind of between my calf and like my Achilles. And this was as I was kind of the tail end of treatment and stuff like that. And I was like, it was like a solid lump. So I went to have to get an ultrasound on that. They weren't really sure what it was at the time. But eventually I got back and they were like, it's just scar tissue, but see, just going. And I had to be like to my girlfriend, Sarah, I've felt this in my calf. Just letting you know, it'll be fine. But like in the back of my head, I'm like, please don't be, like I didn't know what it could have been at the time, but I was like, please don't be something else that like I have to kind of worry about, or kind of the cancer's gone elsewhere sort of thing. So that was just kind of in the back of my head as well, and just kind of any wee ache or pain, you're like, I should probably get this seen to.
Yeah,
like you become a lot more, not kind of active about getting things seen to, but you just kind of subconsciously, you're right, I've had a testicle out, I've had loads of people look at my balls, like there's nothing that will make me kind of steer me away from the doctors anymore. Like I'll just get it sorted and we'll take it from there sort of thing.
Yeah. And which is a really healthy attitude to take as well, because I mean, the biggest problem is that as guys, we don't go to the doctors, and we don't make that approach, especially when it's to do with your balls as well, you know. Yeah. So it's something that's always quite frightening. I always think as well, like when you were saying that the doctor was saying, it's maybe nothing to worry about. You hear that quite a lot, that was an initial case. And you know, as Cahonas, we're out there trying to get rid of the stigma and embarrassment among just men in Scotland. But the more and more you talk to people, and because of the job that I'm doing, and you're meeting people who not only have had cancer, but maybe have had scares, but there seems still to be a stigma around testicular cancer with doctors, you know, because they're just going, nah, it'll be fine.
Yeah.
Obviously the instances are low, but for me, there doesn't seem to be a seriousness on just checking and reassuring somebody.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I think it's just, it's one of those things where, like, I don't know about you, but when I went to the doctors, there was not two individual balls. It was freezing. So I was like, there's no way he's going to be able to get a proper, like, kind of examination of what I can do when I'm like at home sort of thing. So I feel like they're always going to err on just the side of being safe, like you'll be okay, probably nothing to worry about, rather than worst case scenario straight away. But then that worst case scenario, if that had been something he'd done at the time, so it spread to my lymph nodes, they were enlarged.
Right.
It was only a few, like hadn't massively kind of travelled, but that space in time where I'm phoning up the doctors trying to get another appointment, or basically just get someone to see me, could have been a time where it could have just been confined to like the testicle itself and maybe not have travelled elsewhere. So if someone's, then again, I'm saying like 6 months was the kind of time frame I was given when I initially went. Someone's waiting that 6 months, you can go from kind of having testicular cancer to it having travelled to your lungs or whatever.
Yeah.
So I think, yeah, it's a difficult position for doctors to be in as well, I think, just because of the nature of it. But like if you're waiting 6 months and stuff like that, I know it's not their fault or anything, but
yeah,
maybe to kind of, for them to just kind of initially float it as an idea to kind of get a quick answer back about it would be a much better way to kind of go about it, rather than months down the line you're then having to deal with the cancer having spread or anything like that. So yeah, like you're saying, it is just, I think there needs to be more kind of the stigma around ourselves going to get checked, and GPs maybe kind of taking an extra step to kind of, I don't know how you'd go about it, but yeah, I definitely think it's something that's important as well.
I think the biggest thing is making sure that we have stories like yourself and mine and other guys who have been through it, and being able to have conversations like this and really opening up that discourse about it, and taking away the stigma. For us, it's going into schools, going into sports clubs, and really kind of making sure that guys know it's all right to talk about your balls, and it's okay to kind of for there to be a problem, and going to the doctors isn't going to be an issue. I think that's the thing that we really need to engage in. And you get folk who will say that guys, and I've said it on this today already, is that guys are really bad at going to the doctor anyway. So I think that having these types of interactions where it's probably nothing can sometimes put you off maybe following up or going on, or I don't think that is overtly helpful. And I agree with you, it's not necessarily their fault in terms of kind of waiting times, but they do have to look at how they're dealing with that person that's in front of them, and see, I've had knee problems where I've had a bit of cartilage that blew in my knee, and I had to go for an ultrasound and that, but I could still walk, so it's I'd quite happily give up my ultrasound space for somebody who's got a lump on their testicle. And I'm not even just saying that as a cancer survivor, before that, but no, if that's more a priority, then fine.
Something like that, your knee, or I kind of ruptured my bicep and stuff like that. It's you can get kind of, there's not peace of mind. You're right, that's injured, it'll get fixed, we'll deal with it, it'll be fine in a while. Whereas something with a testicle, because it is so private, there's not kind of the same kind of, it's a difficult space where doctors and stuff do have to kind of, I don't know kind of if that was ever fed back to my doctor, that he said I was pretty much nothing to worry about, but then 6 months down the line I'm going through chemo, blah blah blah. I don't know if that ever gets fed back to a doctor, and maybe next time they'll then do a more kind of, not more thorough examination, but they'll perform an examination and then be like, you're going for an ultrasound, we're going to get it sorted quickly, address it quickly, rather than down the line 6 months again, kind of hoping that everything's still fine. So yeah, I don't know if that ever got fed back to my doctor, or I've not seen them since, not kind of heard, but yeah, I don't know, just maybe something where there is a bit more kind of communication just between certain folk in the NHS or private or whatever, just that let's rule out this and then take it from there, rather than let's just wait and see and then we'll rule it out kind of 6 months down the line. Yeah,
because you've got that dual message that happens within that as well. You've maybe got instances where your situation happens and it's something that maybe, I think, feeling what you're describing, you'd have to think that was odd. Yeah. So, but at the same time, taking that stance off, but it's probably not to worry about, to obviously pushing, I think you go to any GP surgery now, you see all the early detection posters.
Yeah.
And it's the key thing, especially with testicular cancer, because like you rightly said, suddenly it can be in your lungs, in your brain, you know what I mean? It can be anywhere. So it's trying to marry those two ideas together and go, well, if you're needing to get seen and, you've got guys and you're talking about early detection, surely you need to kind of, but yeah, I mean, nothing that you and I can change, but it's certainly something that, the hope is that, again, that it's not just people who have got testicular cancer that watch this, there's other, maybe a GP watches this and goes, yeah, okay, I'll take that on board as well. And it kind of saves, that happening to somebody else, because you hear about it a lot. I think that's the scary thing. You do, and not just with testicular cancer, for a lot of cancers, it's, and again, the NHS is overwhelmed, and it's a shame that it's like that. But again, you're getting folk who are maybe not getting treatment as quickly as it could have been, because like you said, you could have just had the operation and maybe a round of chemo.
Yeah.
Now you've had to go through 3, and it's difficult to kind of go through that. What type of chemo did you receive? Can you remember?
I can't remember they sat me down and just kind of described they gave me it was 3 letters.
Was it BEP?
It might have been, yeah. They basically gave me the strongest amount and as much of the strongest amount as they could.
Yeah.
So I had 3 rounds of that. And yeah, they were basically just like, you're young, fit, otherwise healthy. Let's just basically kind of throw this at you in the hope that will sort everything out. So yeah, I had 3 rounds of that. And yeah, I think obviously the effects are cumulative. So the first one I went in for, I honestly didn't feel too bad. But then kind of round 2 and 3, I was like out of breath, doing anything, absolutely knackered. And I remember my girlfriend was like, "Oh no, you look fine, you look all right." And then looking back, I'm like, I look terrible. I'm just like, yep. She was like, "Yep, you look like you had cancer." And I was like, thanks for letting me know.
There's a picture I use when I'm doing my talks, and I basically look like Uncle Fester. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's, it's just like the baggy eyes, the bald head. I'm like, yeah, it's Christopher Lloyd up there.
I'm pretty sure MODOK from Marvel.
Yes, yeah.
So that had just come out, like Ant-Man and the Quantumania or whatever. Mm-hmm. And I'd photoshopped a picture of me as MODOK or whatever, and it just, my face was so round and just so puffy that I was like, that is exactly what I look like. But yeah, for me, the chemo as a whole wasn't too bad. Like I was saying earlier when I was speaking to that other guy who was getting his treatment at the same time, he was having pins and needles, dizzy when he got up. He was sick constantly. He couldn't do anything, and he was getting not bolts of just kind of weird pains throughout his body that would kind of happen. And I was just like, I'm just tired. Yeah. When he was kind of saying that, I was like, yes, I have cancer, but he clearly is. This is a lot worse for him than it is for me. I can't complain in comparison when I was in the beats or whatever, seeing other folk, older guys as well, who maybe had testicular cancer, and there was kind of guys with lung cancer, and I was like, I have the very good end of this deal, in comparison to some folk.
Mm. You do feel that especially when you're in hospital as well, and you got other people around you. Yeah. There was a guy who was next to me, had bone cancer, and it was everywhere, you know, and I'm, complaining and I'm being sick, and this guy's honestly the most stoic human being I've ever met in my life. He's like, "You okay, son?" And I'm like, "No." There
was actually a guy younger than the first night. I was just sharing a two-person room. Mm-hmm. I think he was actually 18 or something. He had bone cancer as well. So he'd had his leg amputated, from the knee down. And he was basically saying that was the second time he was in. So he got given the all clear at New Year, and then they phoned him back 2 weeks later, basically being like, you have bone cancer in the other leg. So I was just like, he's 18, he's had his leg amputated, he's back in again. I'm like, I've just had a ball out. I'll be fine. I can't imagine what it's like for him, especially 18.
Yeah.
Obviously 27 is young, but looking back to if I was 18 or whatever, you'd be shitting yourself. So yeah, seeing other folk in the same position of going through something, but I was just they're going through something a lot worse in comparison to me. So that's kind of, I felt lucky in a way, obviously unlucky, but in the circumstances and being in that environment with kind of much older folks, seeing their families come in and stuff, and I was like, I'm very lucky in comparison.
Yeah, I think as well, when you're in hospital and you're kind of surrounded by that, it does kind of, it weirdly helps as well. It's because of the kind of, sometimes I catastrophize what was happening, and then that next round you're in, you could see around you and you're going, okay, you know, and I had some really awful moments during. I wasn't quite as lucky. I was really unlucky during my chemo, but I had moments though where you're looking around going, yeah, this might be happening to me, but I'm lucky compared.
Yeah, I'm like,
you know?
I can't imagine what so-and-so was dealing with. There was like, I just remember there was an old guy just across from me in one of the rooms, I think maybe the second round of chemo that I was in for, and he was like, his son would come up, had no energy to speak to him, just completely knackered, couldn't stop coughing. He had a couple of falls, like basically trying to get up and down to the toilet. He was told, please just stay in your bed and stuff like that, and I could see him about to get up, and I'm trying to shout someone in, and he's like having a fall in the bathroom, get stuck in the bathroom, and I'm just like, this is like, I felt really sorry for other folk around me.
Yeah.
But like, you all kind of have that common thing of we all have cancer here. Like, not bonds you, but you just kind of have a mutual like understanding sort of thing.
Yeah.
Especially when I was sharing the guy that was diagnosed at the same time as me for my first round, he was in as well. So I'd like chat to him, and we'd be like, we've spoken to so and so, and we're like, we have it relatively easy in comparison to them and stuff like that. Like a guy, I think his family would come in, he was maybe 50-ish, and he had testicular cancer, had to have I can't remember what the procedure is, but they remove like your lymph nodes and stuff.
Right. So
proper like open surgery, stuff like that. And I'm just like, thank God, like I never had to go through anything like that. So yeah, it wasn't like peace of mind when you were in, but it was just nice to, I say nice, but it was nice to kind of be surrounded by people who kind of understood what you were going through. And like all the staff were unbelievable. Like they were so good, especially for, as I say, they're understaffed, and there was one girl who's running from, I think I was on like floor 3, and she was going between the floors to kind of look after folks. So
yeah, I found as well when I was in that my concentration was rubbish, so I couldn't even like see like 20-minute shows. I couldn't even watch anything. Like I was just, but there was this one nursing assistant, this big laddie who would come in and just he would just talk to me about the bets that he was putting on, and do you know what? See the kind of time that he was around, I was like, you are making this so much easier because of, you know, and taking that time to be personable. And I think that was always a thing with the folk in the beats, and like they're all great, you know. It's like
I was in over, like the World Cup was on, so I had at least something to try and watch. Right. But the nurses were amazing. Like, they let my girlfriend stay for like till like 10, 11 o'clock at night. They were just like, it's fine. Just sat in the bed with me and like for hours, just try to keep me entertained. And I'd be like dozing off. I'm like, it's because I'm tired. It's not because like you're boring. But yeah, it was just nice to, like, they obviously are like, they know what kind of makes a difference for folk, and just being able to have folk up for like that length of time and stuff just made it so much more kind of, it was a lot easier to go through than having to just kind of, you're restricted to like 1 hour of folk visiting. And I remember all my treatment kind of, I don't know if it was the same for you, but all my kind of chemo drugs were at night. So they kind of let me do whatever I wanted during the day. So I'd be down in the cafe going for a walk if I could, and like I'd meet some of my friends, and like my family we'd sit in the cafe and stuff like that for a few hours just to kind of pass the time. But they were always great with just every way. Like I remember like they came in, maybe I like my food, so they came in like the first kind of couple of days and they were like, do you want this or this? And I was like, can I have all of them? Like I'm hungry. And she was like, yeah, we'll sort it for you. So just stuff like that just made everything a lot easier.
Yeah. And see, when you were going through your treatment, was there anything that you found that was particularly like you didn't realise was going to come up in terms of like just even the subtle side effects, like see, like brushing your teeth, or generally any kind of problems with your gums and all that type of thing, or was there anything
so
like that?
I was actually, again, really lucky with kind of my gums, like everything like that, but I did have, whenever I'd eaten food, it was just stuck like in my chest.
Right.
So like I was having trouble digesting anything, and like they gave me omeprazole and things like that just to kind of help. But like that was the kind of the main thing for me. Like it would kind of hurt to sometimes drink and just kind of eat food, but thankfully we kind of sorted that for kind of the subsequent rounds of chemo and stuff like that. But I basically had problems with ligaments, tendons, and I had a really weird sensation where my hands felt like they were burning all the time.
All right, okay.
So palms of my hands were just constantly like, only way to describe it is like rope burn. So like even if I'd be like, I couldn't properly close them, couldn't open them properly, they were just kind of stuck. And that just turned out to be one of the side effects of like the bleomycin that I was having to get. So yeah, I think that lasted for maybe 4 or 5 months before it disappeared. And then when I started kind of going about, I'd been given the all clear and going about kind of normal daily life again, where I was trying to do a bit more exercise, like cycle to and from places. My knees were like so painful. I couldn't even just getting up off the chair, or like having sat at my desk for 10 minutes, I'd get up off my seat and I'd be like, my knees are just felt like I couldn't straighten my legs. So I was having issues with like tendons and stuff, and I was having like tendonitis in my shoulders, my hip initially, and then my knees. But thankfully that's all kind of disappeared now.
Right.
But just during the time when you're trying to go back to like what you would normally do, but there's still kind of something lingering, I was like, this is so frustrating, and it's just getting me down like that. I can't do, I'm going back to rugby, but I can't keep running because my knees are so painful, but I can't do anything about it. Like they were like, we can give you painkillers or anything like that. It's like, it's not a sudden pain that needs to kind of be soothed. It's just kind of constantly. And obviously I can't take painkillers constantly for like months or whatever, but eventually it did go away. And yeah, the one with my hands, I just wanting to play my PlayStation all the time, and I'm sitting there like, this is so annoying. Like just stuff like that you don't really think of. But yeah, I didn't really have any kind of, again, very lucky with side effects and stuff in the grand scheme of things. It seems to be, I just managed to get away a bit lighter than other folk. So like yourself, sounds like you had a lot more kind of side effects and issues with treatment, whereas I got off lightly, just kind of in comparison.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the kind of treatment for the like the chemo and stuff like that, I had like similar kind of feelings. It was more like the pins and needles or numbness in my fingers. I've said this before, but I ended up with bird flu and sepsis during my treatment. So like, Jesus. You know, and obviously they weren't part of the chemo, but it was just
signed up for.
Yeah, honestly, I was like, oh, how can this be? But yeah, the biggest thing that I had that killed me was the dextromethasone. Did you get Dex at all?
I don't think I did, no.
So it's a steroid for like as an anti-sickness thing, and it was one of those ones where I'd take it and 25 minutes later it felt like somebody was pushing a train through my head, and it was like I had this want and desire to, like, I could have ran through walls mentally, but physically I was like, oh, and my body and my brain didn't know how to talk to each other. So it was stuff like that was awful, but you know, I'm glad for it because I wasn't nauseated like for the whole time, really. Well, you know,
that's the thing. Like, obviously, you got that, but thankfully, just an anti-sickness tablet was enough for me.
Yeah,
like, because I'm sure one of the kind of older guys who had to get his lymph nodes taken out, I'm pretty sure he was getting that injection, and I could just hear him groaning all the time, and it sounded like he was not having a good time. So yeah, I'm pretty lucky in comparison.
And were you all right when you were doing the white blood cell injections?
Yeah,
and things like
so
that?
Because my mum was a nurse, she was like, I'll do it if you want. And I was like, it'll be fine. I asked if I could put them on the top of my leg just because I felt a bit more kind of comfortable doing that.
Okay.
And yeah, I managed to do that pretty fine. And then I think when I came to, I think it was the third round of chemo, and I was properly like just out of it. Nothing was healing, so I had fucking like hundreds of dots just all over my legs, and just nothing was healing. But yeah, because I have a like a blood condition that just is hereditary, runs in my family, and I've always been checked like kind of every 6 months since I was born, basically. and I think that's why needles don't really bother me. So yeah, I didn't have any kind of issue injecting myself, or when they were putting in my cannula or taking blood or anything like that. It was all just kind of fine for me. But yeah, it's just, I was also just like, it's part of it. I have to do it. Like this pinch of my skin, quick, like 2-second injection. It's 2 seconds. I can manage it. Like, it's not,
in the grand scheme of things as well.
Yeah, you're like, it is nothing.
Yeah, because it's funny, because it does kind of, if you're squeamish about needles and things like that, and you have to go through something, it will quickly take that away, because your brain will go, but you need to do this, you know. So it's like you just go, oh, okay.
Sitting there half asleep, waking up in the morning, and they're coming to sort my cannula, they're coming to take blood, I'm getting an injection. I'm like, just do what you've got to do.
So as a kid, I was terrified of needles, but I eventually I got my first tattoo, and that helped me kind of get over that. And I remember before I went in for treatment, I was talking to my wife and saying they just don't bother me. Like, I probably don't even flinch really. And there was one day she was in watching me, and I think I was getting my cannula resighted. And she was just watching my face and nothing. She was like, Paul, you didn't even blink. I was like, yeah, it's because eventually you just go, it's like, oh, I've been stuck with that many needles now that
I do remember there was this one nurse who, so I always get my blood taken on my left arm, always in this one specific place, because it is such an easy vein to get to. She was adamant on going elsewhere, and I was like, not sure how I feel about that. You could just, I'm not trying to do your job for you, but I'm telling you because everyone else goes here, and it's just the easiest spot. And honestly, that's the only time I've been like, all right, I've had enough. She was like, just kind of stabbed me in every place but this one vein, and like, obviously because you can't heal at the time, I had a massive like bruise halfway down my arm, just black, and I'm like, yeah, I'm not trying to tell you how to do it, but if you'd done that, we'd be fine.
Yeah.
But that was like the only time for me. And then maybe there was one time I woke up, my cannula had popped out.
All right.
Like, I wasn't getting any treatment or anything at the time, but it was just, I woke up and I was like, hand feels a bit wet. And there was just blood like all over the bed sheet, and just kind of like dribbled down onto the floor. But apart from that, I was like, yeah, it's got to be done at the end of the day.
I had, the only time I had anything that was kind of a little bit sore, I had a cannula that was put in here, because I've usually got really good veins, but for some reason they just couldn't. Eventually everything was just constricted. Yeah. And but it was right up against my knuckle for the 3 days that I was in, and I was constantly sore. And I remember like the day that I had nothing left to get, even fluids. The nurse didn't take it out. I just went like, I am done with this. You know, it was that point I was like, I'm done with that, and I'm ready to go home because I'm so tired.
Yeah, so that's kind of similar to like when I think it was my third round of chemo. It was meant to be 28th, 29th, 30th. I turned up on the 28th of December, ready to get my chemo, blah, blah, blah. I was like, I'm familiar with this now. I know what happens. We'll be fine. For whatever reason, like the chemo had been sat out for too long, so they can't use it. So I had to then stay in an extra day, which would take me to the 31st. And I was like, I am not spending New Year in here. I was just, the one thing in my mind, the whole like, because I basically sat on the 28th, 29th, 30th, and then ended up I had to stay the 31st. But I sat in the Beatson. My house was 5 minutes, it's like 5-10 minutes away from the Beatson. But because I'd been kind of checked in or whatever, I had to stay. So I'd spent an extra day in the Beatson, right, just for no reason. And I was like, can I not go home? Like, please, I live 5 minutes away. Yeah. But then it got to the 31st. So it was like the night of the 30th, and I was due to get like my last kind of bag of chemo or whatever. They couldn't get the cannula in, and they were like, your hand's too swollen, we're going to have to wait. And I was like, please no, please don't stay another day. So I was like, it must have been kind of 2 o'clock in the morning, and they were waiting for like another, they had a doctor on who could put a cannula in. And honestly, we sat there for like an hour. He was trying both hands, and eventually I had to get it like right down there at my knuckle as well.
Right.
It was just the only place it worked. But that whole time, I was just sitting there being like, please don't stay in. Please don't make me stay in. Because I knew it was like the kind of the last leg sort of thing. But yeah, it was just, thankfully I got out kind of midday, kind of 31st.
Yeah. Wow. Honestly, it's so funny, like when you hear similar stories as well, because you're like, I can totally empathise with that.
Yeah.
You know, you're like, oh yeah, you just know that, like, nah, I'm just done. You know, you can see it. And again, like, you got folk who maybe getting more and more treatments than maybe we got, and you're going, I don't know how anybody could have got to 6, man. I would have been tearing if I had hair, I would have been tearing it out.
I know. Thankfully, I managed to keep my eyebrows. I remember going to one of the, and like literally, I remember just, so I'm very hairy in general. Hair was going everywhere. The one place still kept my back hair, and I was like, what is this? This is just not fair. But managed to keep my eyebrows because I would have looked horrendous without eyebrows.
You're kind of like a bald chia pet.
I was just like, my girlfriend was like, I remember she came to one of the, like kind of the, I had to get the bleomycin like every couple of weeks or something. So like one of the outpatient things. And she was like, will he keep his eyebrows? And I was like, the doctor was like, yeah, if they're not gone by now, they should be fine. And I was like, oh, thank God.
But yeah, so see, in terms of, you know, hopefully potential listeners and guys who are going to kind of not just be patient going through it, but possibly supporting, you know, people going through it. Is there any advice you would give to guys going through it, or guys who you could maybe support their mates going through it and things like that?
Like for me, and like my group of friends, I'm sure it's the same for, I dealt with it. Humour is the only way, like just, it got me through. So just typical dark humour, all the jokes about having one ball, blah, blah, blah. Like that's what kind of kept me going, sort of thing, was obviously not taking it seriously, but it was more just take everything, deal with it with humour. And for me, that was just the easiest way. Like I'd be the first to kind of take the piss out myself, have a laugh. But yeah, I think for just kind of anyone who maybe has a lump or something with a testicle, just go and get it seen to is the only, like, you can't really say anything else, I suppose, other than, because it's not going to go away or magically get better. Like, if you have a problem, just nip it in the bud, get it seen to as and when it kind of occurs. And then just, I think just again, as we said earlier, just like it is, I think, more difficult for people from the outside rather than the actual person that's going through it. You'll have those moments of, you'll be dreading something, you'll, like you said, you catastrophize and just, you'll think of the worst possible outcomes, like you think of the mortality of all. But I just think I kind of took it as, this has happened, these are the steps we need to take, and once you get to the end of these steps, you'll be fine. And I don't really think you can't go through it any other way. You kind of, once you are diagnosed with cancer, testicular cancer, any kind of cancer, I think that there's that initial flood of emotion, everything runs through your head, but then once you kind of get a moment to collect yourself, you then just like, right, this is what I've got to do. And from then on, I think you just kind of learn to deal with it. It's not, you can't really give someone instructions, or obviously you can recommend things on the way, but as soon as you're kind of on that journey yourself, you find a way to deal with it. And for me, it was humour. It was just kind of having a laugh with my friends, my girlfriend, my family. Plenty of ball-related Christmas presents that year. But yeah, it's just, I think humour for me was the one way that kind of helped me get through it. I don't really know where I'd be if I didn't kind of take a light-hearted approach to it. Obviously, it's really serious, but at the end of the day, you've just got to get through it, and whatever way works for you is the best kind of way to go for it. And your friends and family will definitely follow in the same path if they'll obviously attempt to make everything as easy as possible. Like, everyone was on hand at like a moment's notice. To be honest, if anything, at some points there was too many folk wanting to come up and visit, or I just need a moment, I need to sleep. I think just whatever works for you is the best way to kind of go forward.
Yeah, it seems to be the through theme, you know, that humour, that dark humour. And I think being Scottish, that is the thing as well. It's just that natural thing to do. Just thank you so much for coming on and telling your story, mate. It's been really interesting for me, you know, getting to know other guys who have went through this as well. So, no, I really, really appreciate you, man. Thank you so much.
A pleasure. I mean, this is the first time I've actually spoken about it since I was in the Beatson, like properly with someone else who's gone through the same thing. So for me, it's been a really good experience and just a pleasure in general. No, thank you. Do you want to, I don't know if you want to kind of maybe plug the rugby club, got your own socials, it's up to yourself. I mean, Hillhead, Jordan Hill Rugby Club, we did we Movember campaign. They were amazing throughout it. Like, everyone kind of came up to visit, support me. And yeah, I mean, for me, when I was diagnosed is when I kind of stumbled upon you guys on Instagram. I'd seen kind of things done with football clubs. Obviously, I love watching football. I used to play it when I was younger, and I think that's kind of, for me, a really, like, in my opinion, it's a really good way to kind of get through to people, is through sport and stuff as well. But yeah, it's been a total pleasure, and thanks for having me. No, thanks, mate. Cheers.